Officers okay. Officers are better trained and educated in verbal de-escalation techniques. Officer injuries during crisis events have declined. Officer recognition and appreciation by the community has increased. There's less victimless crime arrest, and there's a decrease in liability for healthcare issues in jails. Okay. I think one of the biggest questions was when to contact a CIT officer and how to contact a CIT officer. CIT officers can be contacted when you feel like there's a mental health issue going on. It's nothing legal about it or anything criminal about it. This person is in distress and you feel like something needs to be done, but you're not sure of what to do. You can call your local police department and simply ask for a CIT trained officer. At this point, every local policeman should have had this training. Policemen in Petersburg, Hopewell, Colonial Heights, Prince George, we've trained all of them. I think it's mandatory now because we are in an area where there is an increase of mental health issues and substance abuse and things like that. So most officers now are CIT trained officers. So in the event that you feel like that's something that needs to be done, that's how you contact them and that's who you ask for. You definitely call the non-emergency number. You don't want to call 911 and ask because they would think, somebody's trying to kill somebody or kill themselves. So you don't want to do that. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm talking too much.
See, we had a question in the chat from Caitlin.
Okay.
Sorry, it was a little long, which is why I typed it out. But
okay.
For someone trying to get an ECO from a magistrate or a TDO, I suppose, though that usually would be CSB at that point.
Right.
Couldn't that person ask or provide whatever documentation to ask the magistrate to be the ATP or the alternate transportation provider? Of course, the magistrate could deny that request, but I thought there was a mechanism for that, especially in the event if the person was maybe a danger themselves, but maybe whoever was petitioning thought that they would be able to safely transport the person to a hospital or wherever they needed to be directed to.
You can make that request, Caitlin. You can make that request. And like you said, it can be denied. Now, I personally have never opted for alternate transportation. It's always probably going to be the police because at that point, if I'm TDOing somebody, they need the police. It's unsafe for me because as clinicians with CSBs, if somebody is homicidal or suicidal, we cannot transport if they're actively psychotic or any of that. So once we contact the magistrate, then of course we can't even think about alternate transportation, but it can be requested. It is on the form. It does ask you that. So I don't know what the instance would be for them to say no, but I guess if you pleaded your case well enough, because you do have to stand in front of the magistrate and give them all this information and, for them to make their decision as to whether to even issue the ECO, but you can request the alternate transportation. I do know that, but I don't know a case when they would say, no. So, or even yes, for that matter, they make their decisions. Sometimes we don't even agree, but it is definitely up to them whether to grant that or not. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
I was just thinking in terms, especially for anyone listening who maybe they work with people who are going through crises, and if they felt safe taking someone to the hospital, that may be less traumatic than law enforcement coming and putting them in handcuffs just to take them to the hospital to even be evaluated.
In that event, if you are, say for instance, you're just a person that does outreach, maybe like or something. If you felt like that person needed to go to the hospital, you wouldn't have to, and you feel like taking them yourself, you could easily just go straight to the hospital yourself. You're going to have to go through the ER and all of that good stuff. But in that event, you could definitely do the transportation yourself because you haven't involved anyone. You haven't involved police, you haven't involved the CSB, and you haven't involved the police. But if you're like a skill builder, so to speak, a lot of times they're dealing with people who are mentally ill, and they may pick up on something and say, well, this person needs to be evaluated. They can drive them to the hospital at that point before you even think about asking anybody else. So you can always go that route. That can be done if you want to go straight to the hospital, but the process is going to be a lot longer because you're going to sit there in that ER until they, get to you. So that's always an option if you didn't want to go through magistrates and cops and all that stuff.
I have a question, because Caitlin had said, I think it was Caitlin, that they, even if it's a CIT trained officer, then the cops come, they're still being handcuffed. But a big part of this was that you shouldn't handcuff them because that's traumatic and they're only going through a mental health issue. So is that not something, like, no matter what, are they going to get handcuffed?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
If it's an ECO, the cuffs are
Okay.
involved. And they do, there is a way to try to make that a little bit less traumatic. The CIT trained officer does explain to the person that this is what we have to do. You're not being arrested. This isn't about, trying to make you feel some type of way, but this is just the way it's done. So, they don't rough them up and throw them down and all that stuff like they do normally for other stuff, but they are talking to them the entire time that they're putting the cuffs on them and explaining to them, this is how this goes with an ECO. This is for our safety. This is for your safety, all that good stuff. But yes, once an ECO is issued, or definitely a TDO, the cuffs are involved. And that's unfortunate, but there's nothing we can do about that piece of it yet. I don't know if we ever will be able to change that because the policemen have to be cautious, just like we do in events like this. So I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to kind of bring up some of the ways. I think somebody asked me, what do we do or what do we say when we encounter someone who is experiencing a crisis? The first thing you want to do is make sure that you realize I can't fix this person. I'm not here to fix whatever all their issues are. I'm only here to deal with what's going on right now. If somebody's psychotic and you're encountering them, the first thing you want to do is not, even though I'm a clinician, we're trained to, get closer and do all that stuff. In that event, if I don't know them, we have to keep our distance just like anyone else. And we train the policemen, which that's what they do anyway. The same thing. You want to try to keep as much eye contact as you can, but if somebody's actively psychotic, 9 times out of 10, they don't even see you. And they probably don't hear you. If they're having auditory hallucinations, they're distracted. So the first thing you want to do is try to engage them in just you. If somebody says they're hearing voices, you do not get to tell them they are not. That is the last thing you want to do. You do not say, no, you don't hear that. You do not say, God ain't over there. If they tell you God is sitting in that chair, guess what? God is sitting in that chair. And it's nothing you're going to do to change their minds. And it's not for you to change it. You're also not supposed to say, oh, yeah, I see him. No, you don't join in on that either. What you do say is, okay, I understand that you see God. I don't, but I understand that you do. And if they say, I'm hearing voices or whatever, you don't say, I don't hear them, because we know that you don't, but they do. What you need to ask is, what is the content of what they're hearing? What are the voices saying? Are the voices loud? Are the voices yelling? Are the voices whispering? What are they saying? Are they commanding you to do something? Or can you just not understand them? Because if you encounter someone who has voices that are instructing them to do something, that's when you need to really start paying more attention. Because these are the people who 9 times out of 10 will act on the voices. If you meet somebody who hears whispers or muffles, okay, they can drown that out. They're good. But if somebody's hearing somebody yelling, screaming, grab that axe, or somebody's coming to get you, she's going to kill you, grab something. These are the ones you really need to be careful about. So it's very important to ask what they're hearing. And you can tell if somebody is responding to internal stimuli. They're not looking at you. They may be talking, and you learn like, well, who are they talking to? They're hearing voices and they're responding. So at that point, for us, the first thing we try to do is get them to focus on us. It's difficult, but you have to ask them. They say, can you look at me? You may have to put I'm always the, can you look at me? You know, right in my eyes. Can you look at me? Can you focus on my voice? You know, because that way, then they can kind of drown out the other voices and they can bring their attention to you. That's the first thing you want to do, is try to get them to see you and hear you. And at that point, that's when you kind of try to figure out what's going on, because that's the only way you're going to know at that point. Keep your tone pleasant. Do not yell. And most importantly, let them speak. It could be a lot of prattling and nonsensical, and it could be everything crazy under the sun, but you have to let them get it out. Trying to interrupt, it only upsets them. So let them say what they have to say. It may make no sense to you. Doesn't have to. Your only job is to try to get this person some help at this point, because they are distressed. And most people, believe it or not, do not want to be in crisis. So when they are, they're pretty open to suggestions, because they want this to end just as much as you do. They just don't have the tools to make it end. Okay. So they're looking for you to kind of help them. And the way you treat them and approach them, you got to think, well, suppose this was my mother. Suppose this was my brother, my sister. Think about it that way. And that'll help you in the way that you interact with them. If this was my family member, how would I want someone to treat them in this kind of situation? We also, by the time the policeman gets there, or if we've called them there and we're there together, they stand back. You know, they don't try to do all this. They say hand holding is what they call us, the hand holders. They don't have to do all that. Once we've calmed this person down, if we can, that is when they step in and we explain to them, okay, the policeman is going to take you to wherever we've made the decision to take them. Do you understand? This is what's happening. We're going to try to get you some help so that you can feel better, da, 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 da. But they don't just immediately show up and throw the cuffs on. No, we have to kind of coax them into the situation just like we are. So it is a slower process, but it's a safer process, because we're trying to avoid people getting hurt. We're trying to avoid startling this person and shocking this person and making them distrust police or us, because trust is the most important factor when you're having a crisis like this. And you have to be empathetic versus sympathetic. You want to try to understand, what if this was me? You know, what if I'd been sleeping on the street for weeks? What if I hadn't had medication in months and I don't know what's going on, you know, or I'm hearing voices or whatever. So kind of put yourself in their shoes, because this could be any of us, you know, to kind of understand. And when they're talking, you know, let them know you're listening. You know, I understand that you're having this, or I hear you saying, or you know, I see that you're sad, or I see that you're depressed. Can you tell me what's going on? So it's just kind of giving a host of questions, allowing them to give you their situation and taking the time to help this person, versus, like I said, calling police because they look scary or funny and things like that. So it's just a longer process, but it's a better process, and it's a trust building process. If you're a person that's out there, always be aware of where you are. Be aware of the scene. Like some of the people who do outreach, like Kiki and people like that, they have to really be aware of where they are. You know, this person could be out in the middle of nowhere. I know people who do outreach. You have to really be aware of your scene. And this goes for anybody. You're looking around, you're seeing if there's other people hanging around, maybe looking suspicious. And keeping your distance. Always appear non-threatening. You don't want to stand there with your arms folded and things like that, because that makes people uneasy. You know, try to appear as calm as possible. And like I said, if there's a whole lot of other people around, staff, you want to try to clear that out. When it's us and the police, we try to get down to just one of us and one policeman. We don't need an audience. If you got an audience, you want to try to get them away from that, because that does create even more issues and anxiety about the situation. And lastly, if somebody has a weapon, do not even try to engage. We've had people who have jumped off ledges, jumped over bridges, jumped off the bridge. jumped out of windows. You know, there are just going to be times when there's nothing you can say or do. Somebody's going to kill themselves, they're going to kill somebody. We can talk to it blue in the face, but there is no technique that works for every situation. We wish that there was, but you have to be prepared for things like that. Some of that could occur. But if there's a weapon involved, this person is actively psychotic, do not take any chances. You don't want to use any talk therapy. You're going to call the police because they're trained to deal with that. We're not. So do not put yourself in danger thinking, okay, let me engage this person, because sometimes that's not going to work. But you will know when it's a situation that you feel like is above you. You know, this is something you cannot do. But always be extremely careful. And at any time, if you feel in doubt, please just call the police. Let them intervene. Always ask for a CIT trained officer, but you definitely do not want to approach anyone with a weapon, ever. That's not something we do either. So I kind of think that's all. I think I talked myself to death. Did I miss anything?
I have a question.
Okay.
Maybe just kind of about the process. So like you call for a CIT trained officer, and then when you're talking about the ECO and the TDO, so the emergency custody order, when is that? Is that always involved?
No, that's not always involved. You can actually call and just get a wellness check. Has anybody heard of a wellness check? Okay, you can say, grandma is acting weird. I mean, they're going to ask you, what does that mean? You could say she has a history of mental illness and I'm kind of worried about her. You know, she's whatever. And I'm not able to go and check on her. Can I get an officer to do a wellness check? Can I get a CIT officer to do a wellness check? You can also do that. That's something they do all day, every day. But now if an ECO is, you know, that's when you've had it. Most people, by the time they say, I got to go get an ECO, they've tried and tried with this person and they're just at the point where they can't get them to do anything. They can't get them to take medicine. They can't get them to go to the doctor or anything. So at that point, a family member or somebody says, I'm going to get, or me, myself, a clinician, may say, well, hey, we're just going to get the ECO. But like I said before, the ECO is for that particular day, that particular time frame. You have to have seen these behaviors. Couldn't have been yesterday, couldn't have been what somebody told you. You, Jackie, will have been in that person's face and they're saying, I'm going to do this or do that, or the house is filthy, they haven't bathed in 6-7 days, there's rotten food everywhere. That's when you, Jackie, will go into the ECO and say, go to the magistrate and say, hey, my family member, you know, they're mentally ill. I went there. We hadn't seen them in days. The house is filthy. They're filthy. I looked at their medicine. They're not taking them. They were saying all type of weird stuff. The house was this, that. That is when you get an ECO because you have seen the person. You've decided that this person's not able to make any good decisions because apparently they're not, because look what they're doing. At that point, the magistrate will then decide whether to issue the ECO or not, because what's going to happen is this person is going to have to be actively psychotic, which most of the time, by the time you get ECO, they are, or they're unable to make decisions or take care of themselves. If somebody hasn't bathed in 2 weeks, believe it or not, that's not enough to get an ECO. If somebody tells you I didn't took my medicine in 3 weeks, if they're not jumping out the window or threatening to kill somebody, that's not going to get them TDO either. So it takes a lot of information and basically seeing something before it's granted. So just because you know this person isn't normally like that, it's not going to necessarily mean that they're going to be hospitalized. You can get a clinician to assess them and they'll say, well, you know what? They're not doing that great, but at the same time, they're not at the level where I feel like they need involuntary hospitalization. You might talk them into going into the hospital, which is always great. If we can talk somebody into going involuntarily, that makes our job a whole lot easier. But if you see, you know, if somebody tells you they have an axe, they went out and bought an axe 2 days ago, and you see the axe, and then you say, well, what are you going to do with that? Well, the neighbor's been bothering, bam, you got to, they're going to hospital. Because first of all, they've identified that they're homicidal. They have a weapon, and they've identified who they just might use it on. So situations like that, you won't have to worry about. But it's always kind of difficult to gauge whether you're going to be able to get this person in or not. And like I said, a clinician and a magistrate can make that decision. And sometimes we don't agree with them. But that's usually what happens.
Thank you. That was really thorough. Thank you. That helped.
Okay.
That was
That's
great.
what I'm trying to answer as best as I can, so people understand what I'm talking about.
Is there any time that someone shouldn't call the police, that it could escalate a situation, do you think?
That would be a case by case. It depends on how well you know the person. If it's somebody that you know has had numerous run-ins with cops, and the minute they see a policeman, it becomes worse, maybe not. But at the same time, if this person really needs help and they're so off the deep end by this point, the only way that they are going to get better is if they have inpatient hospitalization, and they're not going to go on their own. You already know that. They've told you they're not. You might have to, even though you don't want to. And they may hate you for a couple of weeks, because believe you me, I got clients that hate me to death from years ago. You put me in a hospital. Yep, I sure did. So you might, encounter that. But when it's over and they feel better, they won't hate you anymore. But yeah, that's going to be a case by case thing. You know this person better than anybody else. And if you feel like, calling the police, but like I said, it's always good. Call a CIT trained officer. They know how to interact with these
Okay.
versus.
Okay.
Just
Yeah, I was even thinking, I tend to think that everybody at some point in their life is on a spectrum of mental health versus illness, and depending on triggering factors, someone could have an episode depending on their stress levels.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes police might just add to their stress.
Mhm.
But
And
so
that's
I
true.
don't know. That's why I was asking.
But that's true though. That's a very true statement what you said. I mean, any of us on this call right now have probably been at the brink of probably needing some hospitalization. At least I feel like I do. So yeah, that can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone, and it's good that you asked that. That's true.
Okay, because I think I've witnessed that before
Mhm.
from somebody who was actually just in mourning.
Yeah.
But they were pretty vocal and aggressive with it, and they called the police, and it made the whole thing just blow up.
Yeah.
And I think if they didn't do that, it would have simmered itself down. So I thought it was like throwing,
Well, also in that case though, Kayla, if somebody's that depressed, you have to remember a lot of people don't think lack of sleep and depression is that big of a deal, but it is. You can die from lack of sleep. I think
Yeah.
people know that.
Yeah.
And depression itself, if it goes untreated for so long, you become psychotic. I don't think people know that either.
Okay.
So lack of sleep and depression can kill you. It can make you psychotic. You can start to hear things, you can see things, you can smell things, you can feel things, all that stuff that comes with being like a schizophrenic. You can experience that just from depression if it goes untreated for so long. So in that event, even though that person was mourning, they're depressed. So if that would have continued, like I said, it could have gotten worse to the point what I just said. So calling the cops probably was better than waiting, because at some point it would have gotten worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question, if that's okay.
Okay.
Could you, I just don't know very much about it. Could you explain a little bit more about a temporary detention order?
Okay, a TDO is once we've determined that this person, a pre-screener, somebody like me, we've determined I don't need no ECO. It's already apparent you got to go to the hospital. There is no question about it. You are going. And I've had to say this before, you're going. It's because this person is extremely psychotic. They cannot make a decision. I couldn't even ask them, hey, do you want to go to the hospital? That's out of the question. They're so far gone. They're either so delusional or they can't even give me an answer. They could be catatonic at this point. They're just so out of it. everything they say makes no sense. So I've already decided this person has to be hospitalized because first of all, they need to be stabilized on medication so that they can get back to some sense of normalcy. They can't bathe themselves because they're just not gonna do that. They're not sleeping, they're not taking medicine. Like I said, they're actively psychotic. So that is when we've decided this person cannot make a decision. They cannot take care of themselves. There is no other choice but to put them in a hospital. That is a TDO. That is something a clinician will make the decision on. There are no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no room for guessing. ECO is when somebody, hey, I need somebody to pull them in and assess them for this. If they get a TDO, ain't no more of that going on. They're going. The cops are going to get them. There's a hospital and they're going. But an ECO, like I said, you're going in, you're presenting your case. You feel like they need to go somewhere. Magistrate will say, okay, I'll send them to the hospital. We'll call in a clinician and they'll do the assessment. At that point, that clinician could say, well, I don't see what this person saw. This person does not meet criteria for hospitalization. So with an ECO, it's a possibility that person may go home after that clinician does the assessment. Now, does that make sense, Jackie?
Yeah. So then when they go to the hospital, is it always with a police officer and handcuffed, or is it sometimes like in an ambulance?
No, if we do it, the officer themselves can do what we call a paperless ECO. An officer out in the street may see somebody floating around and they say, well, okay, this person is having a mental health crisis. They don't know it, but I know it. They can do what we call a paperless ECO, and they can do it themselves, and they can take them in to the ER, and they can call in a clinician to do the assessment. So it doesn't necessarily mean us, but there's going to have the cuffs though. If the police are involved, the cuffs are involved, because that's their own personal safety. And that's what policemen do. That's not something they're going to change. I mean, policemen put you in cuffs regardless. And that's unfortunate, but that's going to happen. That's going to happen, unfortunately, but they do.
Just a follow-up question. So a magistrate has to approve a TDO as well, correct?
By the time we get a TDO, it's already done. If I say you need to go and all this stuff is done, we do send the petition into the magistrate and all that good stuff. But pretty much at that point, they're just sending out the cops. Because a hospital has accepted this person. We've already found a bed and all that good stuff. Because that's something we have to do first. We have to find somebody who wants to take this person. Hospital beds are hard to find. But once that's done, the magistrate is basically just issuing the police to pick the person up.
Thanks.
TDOs are harder. Yeah, put it like that.
I had a question, Vicky.
Okay.
Just to clarify a couple of things. So you said previously, like if we are aware that somebody is clearly in some sort of crisis and we feel pretty strongly they need to be hospitalized, we can go to the magistrate's office and request the ECO?
You can if you have some type of relationship with the person. Sometimes the magistrate will say, well, who are you supposed to be? But I've seen neighbors actually do it, and there's been times when I've wondered how that happened. But you, with the line of work that you do, yeah, you could, because you spend a lot of time with these people. You have a relationship with them. So yeah, you could actually go to magistrate and ask for ECO.
Okay. Would that generally be better than, like, let's say someone is actively in a crisis? Would it be better to find your way to the magistrate's office, or would it be better to call a CIT trained officer, generally speaking?
It depends on who the person is and how well you know them. You know what I mean? It's like, how welcoming are they going to be to a cop? How are they going to feel if I send a cop, even if it's a CIT trained just for wellness, is that going to trigger them more, And ECOs, they're kind of tedious because you got to stand there and you got to, swear to this, it's a good experience to have, don't get me wrong, and it's also no guarantee that the person's going, once they get assessed by the clinician, that they're going to be hospitalized. There's never, that's just not the way it works, unless we do it and we do a TDO, but an ECO, you're always going to be waiting for that clinician to finally do their assessment. and to decide if this person, needs to be put in the hospital. So we do have very angry family members and Alf people who say, this person's acting up and y'all said they didn't need to be in the hospital. So there's always the chance that they may not be admitted. And that's the only bad thing about, intervening, is the fact that you may feel like this person needs to be in the hospital, but because of the laws of the Commonwealth and the rules we have to abide by, they may not go.
Are there any other questions?
I guess I have one. I know you said it kind of whoever has beds, so maybe there's not specific ones, but are there like any specific go-to hospitals that you call first?
Yeah, Southside, John Randolph are our top two. Poplar's kind of hard because they require Medicare and Medicaid. They want double insurance. But Southside and John Randolph are our first top two to call. In the event there are no local beds, then we have to move on to the state hospital. So if we call over God's creation and we can't get them in, then Central State has to admit them. And this came about because of the Cree situation. I'm sure everybody remembers that. We can no longer, hope for a bed and have people sit around waiting 7, 8, 9, 10 hours and still no bed available. That guy went home and, everybody knows the story after that. So now we are required to make sure that they get in somewhere. And the last resort is the local state hospital when we have just run out of time and places that will accept someone.
Awesome, thank you.
Others? There are no more anyone need to put any in the comments?
I have one more, I guess. I'm sorry.
Jackie, you might have a question that somebody else just hasn't verbalized. His questions are good.
Okay, I keep waiting, so I'm not monopolizing.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, so when they are admitted to the hospital, is kind of that the end, or are they connected with like the care coordinator? Yeah, I guess that's it.
Oh, you talk about like their insurance, who
Like in the hospital, when they're in the hospital.
Once they're admitted, of course, they're admitted to the psych floor, of course, you know
Right.
that piece. Whoever is working with them, they will have an individual social worker that works along with them, clinician in the hospital. That person, if they're not associated with anybody, if this is their first time, and they're not connected to anything else, before they leave, of course, they'll come up with a discharge plan, and they will suggest follow-up care, and they will hope that this person will get follow-up care, and they will, usually come up with all these follow-up appointments and places they should go and things they should do. So that is the way that they become connected to additional services once they're out, so we can avoid this, so that they can get some service that will keep them stable and they won't have to continuously be going in and out of the hospital. Now, everybody does not follow through. Some people do, some people don't. And that's usually how people get connected with us. They are given an appointment for same day access if this is their first time, or if they're already associated with us, their case manager will be contacted and say, hey, Joe Blow's been in the hospital, just letting you know, because a lot of times they don't tell us. And we'll get the discharge paperwork and follow up with that. Somebody said, how long? Length of hospital stay is dependent upon just how severe the situation is. If somebody is so psychotic and they have not had medication in 3-4 months, and it all depends. Some people clear up quickly. I've had people one shot, they're next thing you know, they're clear. But you got some people, it will take 3-4 weeks before you see a difference. And there could be a combination of medicines before they figure out which ones work and before they are released. Anytime somebody's there for almost 30 days or more, they are considered to be somebody that needs to be referred to the state hospital, because that's a little bit longer than a normal stay. So usually about a week or two is about how long they usually stay. And if need be, if they need to be extended, they can be. But like I said, once they start getting close to that 30 days, it's time to evaluate this person for probably a state hospitalization stay.
How about somebody who's, you know, so-called talked off the edge of the bridge, you know, a suicide attempt?
That still depends too. It depends on
Okay.
why they, you know, got to that state, you know, what was going on. And like I said, some people, whatever their situation is, could have cleared up. I mean, somebody could have lost their job and felt suicidal that day, you know, easily. If something maybe put on, antidepressants are not fast acting too. Let me just tell everybody that. If somebody's depressed and they start taking antidepressants, do not expect to see a difference in any less than 2 months. There are no fast acting antidepressants. So it takes a lot to keep those people engaged. Okay. So antidepressants are slow acting. So if you encounter somebody like that and they say, well, it's not helping, please encourage them to keep taking it.
We have a question. Are the TDOs still 72 hours?
You know what? And I gotta think, because I do I can't even remember. The laws just changed. I know we got extended on the hours for the ECO. ECOs are now 7 hours. A TDO, you know what? I'm glad somebody asked. I gotta find out myself. And I'm a pre-screener. I just forgot that. I'm glad, Jessica, you asked me. How dare you put me on the spot? I cannot remember about the TDO. But definitely we have 7 hours for an ECO we have 7 hours to find a bed. You know, they extended, those used to be 4 and that time will run out, but now we do have the 7. I will have to remember, Jessica, and that's sad, but I cannot remember. I haven't had to do a TDO lately.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just curious.
Look, I can't even remember the last time I did a TDO. I mean, I've done an ECO, I've done it. But I don't think I don't know, but I'll find out. I totally forgot that one.
Do we have other questions? Jamal, you came off of mute. Did you have a question? Jamal Ellison? No? Okay, here we have one from Wendy. If a bed is not found in state, can you look out of state?
You can. Yeah, and that eliminates why the state hospital has to take them. That's basically it. That eliminates us from trying to have to go out. It used to be we had to before the Creed situation, and it became to where the state hospital local has to take this person to prevent us, because there was a time we had to start looking into Maryland and all that kind of stuff. So the new law kind of prevents us from having to do that out of state piece. Central State would be our last stop.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Are these policies, just kind of jumping off of that, are these policies and practices just in Virginia, or are there counterparts for CIT in all other states or around this region?
Now the CIT stuff, it should be the same in every state hasn't adopted it. It started in Tennessee. Some states are just now adopting it, and I don't know if they all have maybe their own, but it's supposed to be a all-inclusive program. Everyone is supposed to run the same with the officers and how they're trained. So I think the program should be the same all over. But now I don't know about the situation as far as hospitalizations and TDOs and ECOs go. I don't know if that the way we do it here in Virginia is the same in other states. I don't know. I don't know if it's because it's a Commonwealth Now that question I cannot answer, but of course the CIT program itself, yes, it's the same all over.
Great questions, people. Very good. Here's another from Wendy. Does the VA have a large amount of CIT workers, or is there a shortage?
There is a shortage.
Okay.
I'm glad somebody asked. We need people. I've been doing this for years. I have not been able to participate in the last couple of years. And a matter of fact, they just had a 40-hour training a couple of weeks ago. And had we had this training, then I probably could have told some of you to sign up. But I am going to give you the information to.
I gotta run this thing to Vernon Johns before they leave.
Okay.
So
For
I'll
Emily.
be back in about 20 minutes. All right.
Okay.
Sorry, I
That's
just
okay.
muted.
I'm going to give everybody Emily Caskey. She's the new training coordinator for CIT training out at the Crater Criminal Justice Academy for people who are interested in becoming a CIT team member. It is a 40-hour training. So you got to have your whole week of being able to do this, but it's a lot of fun. The cops are great that help train people like me. I'm a trainer as well. When I have time, I actually come and help out. People who work in the jails. So it's a good program. And if it's something you're interested in, it's always good to know the techniques, to see some of the actual experiences, because we provide them with actual scenarios and then we act them out. So the cops bring us stories of what have happened to them and we bring them some of ours and we'll act them out. And you as a person who's participating will have to try to figure out, well, how do I fix this? How do I interact with this person? So it's sometimes it's funny, but it's very educational. It's an informal thing, but you get to see what you would do yourself if you walked up on this situation. So it's always good to kind of see how well you know yourself. I mean, because a lot of times you might think you do something, but then if you're faced with it, you're like, well, what would I do? And there are times when we've been clueless. I mean, I've said, you know what, I don't know. And they're shocked for us to say that, but we don't have a magic wand. Clinicians don't have a magic wand. We don't have a book of spells that we can pull out. So, we don't know all the time either. So I think if anybody's interested, it would be a good experience if you have, a whole week to take this training. I think you would enjoy it. It's very informative. But her name is Emily. That's Emily. And I'm gonna put her information in the chat box too, just so in case nobody hears.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you could do that.
Her name is Emily Caskey, and she is the new training coordinator, and out there at the academy at Crater. And she would be the person that you would talk to about the training. I don't know when the next 41 will be, 40 hours, because if you're new, you'd have to do that one. But she can always send you an email and let you know whatever, any questions you may have about the training. And I think, some of you, especially the ones that had the great questions, I think it'd be really great for some of you guys to take it, because you sound very interested in this kind of thing. And it's always great to have people who are wanting to help us with this population, because it is a growing population. The homeless, and most, believe it or not, have some type of mental illness or some substance abuse or both. So learning how to interact with them is great for all of us.
Vicky, you
this
see
is her
Taliba's question.
email.
Is it free?
No.
Is there a fee? Is there a fee for the training?
No, the training is free.
Okay.
I have one
So
more.
I put her email also.
Let's see that. Thank you.
Vicky,
Uh-huh.
I had a question on, and it's sort of in the same line, but I was just want to ask you this. had you ever heard of, it's different training, but I wanted to see if you had ever heard of it being offered around here. It was mental health first aid. You ever
Oh,
heard
yeah,
of
we do that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't know who can take it though. I'm yelling it all out. I mean, we take it, but
Right.
I don't know, Janice, if it's open. I just got an email about that. Strange, you just asked me that. I just got an email about mental health first aid that I
Yeah.
didn't read.
I've had it. I think most types of practitioners are open for that. I was trained as a chaplain in that. Nurses and doctors are trained in it. So yeah, I think that's pretty open about who can get that training.
Yeah, and
I'm gonna
ECU
forward
offers
it.
it.
interesting about that is that, I mean, when I took it, it was actually, I don't know whether they do it all the time, but I was so impressed because the people that were teaching the class in our class were actually people that had mental problems. So that was just so interesting. I remember one guy saying he was suicidal and he just had an episode about a month before class. So it was amazing just to see them, from their perspective, teach the class. It was awesome. So I didn't know whether they still gave it or not,
Well, I just forwarded Kaylee an email that I got about mental health first aid, and she can spread it out because I'm like, I just got this email about that. But we
Thank you.
do have it here at District 19. I do not know where they offer in the community, and maybe it's in that email that I did not read. I forwarded to Kaylee. I'll just tell the truth, and and she could distribute. Kaylee, you could send it out.
Oh
It's
yeah, well I'll get
something
it. I'll get it out. Thank you. And I think I had the same trainer as the person who had other mental health issues.
Right, yeah.
I
Okay.
think it was the same. So it sounds like a similar story.
Yeah, okay.
That's great. Thank you, Vicky.
On shelter. Well, Jackie, I have never asked the cops to go and check on somebody who maybe I can't remember. I don't recall having a police check on. You know what? Yes, I have. Say, for instance, somebody's been living behind a particular building, and I know for a fact. I usually don't send the cops out. I might do it myself. I might go out and assess it myself. I mean, I'm sure the cops might. If you say there's this person that we've been seeing hanging out at the local post, I don't know. And I don't even know if they'll do it. I hope that they would. But a lot of times you can actually, well, I do. If I see somebody and they look like they're in distress, I'll approach them. But that's just me. Everybody ain't gonna do that. But I would hope if you call the police and you said you just saw somebody acting some type of way or whatever, can they ride by and say, I think they would. I'm not gonna say for sure. I'm just thinking. I think they would. I would hope that they would.
Thanks. I'm just curious.
Okay, we've gone an hour, so we've had our designated time. We'll take one more question. Do we have anyone else? Well then, how about we give Vicky a hand? I appreciate your coming out for this so much. You can see a few of us, Vicky. Yay! Thank you. So thank you so much.
All right. And if y'all have any other questions that I probably could not answer today, feel free to send them to me. Because like I said, we don't have to, thank God we don't do a lot of TDOs because we don't want to have to do that. And I had kind of gotten a little rusty on some of our own stuff. So anything that I missed, please feel free to email me and I will do my best to answer. But anybody, if you are interested in that training, please contact Emily to see about taking it. I think you would really thoroughly enjoy it. I really do.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Yes, I'm currently working on the cash newsletter. I don't know if it'll go out before the 4th, but I'm working on it. Okay. And so, Vicky, what you're emailing to me information about Emily, that gives me material to put in there. So even that's appreciated. Okay. So, all right. Well, thank everyone. Have a good evening. have a very safe 4th of July weekend. If you're traveling, I wish you travel blessings, and have a wonderful time. Stay cool, drink plenty of water, and take care of yourself. Take care of your own mental health. Me, when I was hearing from Vicky about lack of sleep, because I've been trying to move after work and get out of my old apartment so I don't get charged for rent in July. I'm going, I don't get psychotic.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you very much. All right. God bless you all. Take
All right,
care.
thanks. Bye-bye.